I was out walking my dogs. This dude across the street was just talking shit to this lady. Like, he was screaming at her. He was like, "You let this fucking dog piss on my lawn one more time and I'll fucking kill you." And I just go, "Hi, no." Pivoted, started walking straight across the street at this guy. "If you touch me, I'll sue." And I was just like, oh, fuck, dude. All of my skills are useless here. So I made a show for Netflix called The Green Beret's Guide to Surviving the Apocalypse. When I went into it, I was like, dude, I'm going to make everything so fucking perfectly military. And I'm working with my own prop guy. The day of shooting that scene, he walks over to you and he hands you the barrel's wrong and the fucking uniform's wrong and the kit is wrong. It's so hard to get over. The Special Forces course, you have to be a big boy to be here. And they tell you in the beginning, they're like, you lose your rifle, you're fucking done. On my 7th day of selection, I lost my rifle. We were doing land nav prep and I had finished, sat down by the road waiting for a truck to come by to pick us up. And when I saw the truck light, I ran over to the truck and I looked down, I realized I didn't have my rifle. The cadre was like, "Where the fuck is your rifle?" I couldn't find it. And I was just like, "Does this mean I'm done?" And he's like, I'm Shawn Vance. I was a Green Beret. I was an 18 X-ray. I became an 18 Delta, which is Special Forces medic. I served from 2008 to 2013. And I did the 18 X-ray program. So that's where you go straight from the street. You do a little bit of extra tryouts in the beginning, and then you get to go all the way in. You go through airborne school, and you get to do the Special Operations Preparation course and go straight to selection. So I didn't have to do the prerequisite 5 years, make E5. I skipped that line and got the tryouts right away.
Awesome. And what rank did you get out?
E6, Staff Sergeant. I had a fun childhood, but it was weird. Mostly because we were homeschooled, which meant, I didn't have any friends. No, it was great. We spent so much time outside. Like, our summers were at my grandpa's ranch in Texas. I remember driving his Volkswagen Vanagon at 8 years old with a shotgun and a spotlight, and he would pay us to just go hunt varmint. So, raccoons, possums, snakes, anything you could shoot. We mostly didn't kill anything. We just put ourselves at risk. But yeah, me and my brother driving around at a young age. I always thought military spec ops was so cool. That's what we were pretending to be. Put masks on, run around when it's rainy outside, feel like a ninja. But yeah, it was a lot of, I think I grew up on the tail end of the come home when the streetlights come on. My mom was a country girl, so she let us really have a lot of independence that nowadays it seems almost scary to me, I was a good kid. I was raised very homeschool, very Christian bubble. But I didn't know that. I was just having fun with me and my weird friends in the homeschool co-op. I went to high school eventually, mostly because I wanted friends. My brother, he was totally fine being homeschooled. I was a social kid. I wanted to get out of the house. So I went to a high school, private high school called Valley Christian High. Very good kid, never partied, didn't drink, didn't do any of that stuff. But I still got in trouble, but it was always wild trouble. It was, undeveloped frontal lobe trouble, lighting the street on fire, car surfing, doing donuts on the football field, things that you're not supposed to do. But I would get out of it almost by just going I wasn't drinking. And then I went to college. On a track scholarship to Azusa Pacific University, which is over in West Covina. And really I fell off the wagon of straight edge, that's for sure. I tried weed for the first time. I was like, this is what they're mad about? This is awesome. And that was kind of it was really a turning point. For a little bit of a dark time, I was like, all right, well, if they lied about weed, they must have lied about every other drug. And so I tried a bunch of drugs. I got really into stealing, not because I needed anything, but because I loved the excitement of it. And I found a journal from those years that said I'd written, "Nothing stops you but fear," which is retarded, right? Tons of things can stop you, like freeway meth, cops, overdoses, things like that, which are all what stopped me. No, eventually we used to rob this Albertsons. Well, we used to rob Albertsons every week. And I say me and I would always take a getaway driver. And I thought it was Ocean's 11, dude. I never went to the same one twice. I would rotate these 6 different Albertsons. And I chose Albertsons because all the cashiers faced away from the entrance. So I could just fill up a shopping cart and push it out the entrance. And if anybody chased me, I'd run. And I was doing track, so couldn't catch me. But eventually I took my best friend's roommate, and he didn't follow the SOP. He parked in Albertson's parking lot. They got his license plate. They arrested him. He ratted me out. They had me for $32,000 in theft, which is a felony. Fortunately, I'm white, and my parents got me off all year. and got a drop to a class 7 misdemeanor. And I landed 80 days of community service on the Caltrans freeway, which sucked. That's just picking up trash on the side of the freeway. Still didn't really learn my lesson. Like I moved home to Arizona. I got kicked out of school, moved home to Arizona, was living in my parents' garage, still not like following the rules. I was smoking weed all the time, but I was smart about it. You know, I carried some fake urine in my pants on my drive home. So if they drug tested me, I would just squirt that in. They didn't know to watch the dick like they teach us in the Army. But eventually, while I was cleaning up the freeway, so I would go back in the summer and clean up freeways in California, and I found a bag of meth, which I didn't know it was a bag of meth. I was just like, hey, this has got to be drugs. So I called my friend. He knew it was meth. And he said, as long as we snort it, you won't get addicted. I was like, sounds like that's what we're doing. So we snorted it all in a night, treated it like cocaine, and I overdosed. 2 days later, my heart rate was through the roof. My left arm started to go numb. I was really scared. Called my mom. Didn't tell her what was going on, but I was like, hey, my heart's beating really fast. My left arm's numb. She's like, go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital. They sedated me. What it came out with is I had screwed up the electrical system in my heart. My SA node was messed up, so it would misfire anytime that I had an adrenaline rush. And it would literally make me pass out. So like I could be playing Halo and just be like, yeah, oof. So, you know, or my friends would hide behind like a wall and be like, ah, and I'd be like, ah. So it was scary for a minute, yeah. But that was what I needed. I needed something to get me to the point where like, hey, this shit could kill you. Stop being an idiot. You know, I was like, all right, this is bad. I should make some changes. And I did. I went through a cardiac rehab program, did a minor heart surgery where they go in through your femoral arteries, cauterize the misfiring node. And then really part of it was like, my brother was an intelligence officer in Army intelligence. And he was like, dude, get your shit together. He told me about the 18 X-ray program. And I was like, all right, like literally on the box or on the thing. It was like, for people that think outside the box and wouldn't succeed in a regular regiment, this is your opportunity. And I was like, okay, that's me, right? Because I was always loud. I was always like, you know, it's not that I didn't respect authority. It's that I was like, well, I can just be fun and they'll be okay with it. You know, like if I am silly enough, they'll like me still. And most authority did like me because I towed the line. But anyways, my brother drove me into the military because I had like I wanted to go to Hollywood and do comedy. That was like a big driver inside of me. I was always a performer. And in my mind at the time, off of what I could find on Google, it was like, dude, you got to just go straight to Hollywood, become somebody's assistant and keep going up that path. And so when I went to college, it was for film. And I was like, that's the path I'm going to take. And then when I got kicked out of college and everything kind of fell apart, I was like, all right, that path probably isn't real. I should do something else. And then the idea that I could go straight into a fun, door kicking excitement. You know, you watch the recruitment video online, you're like, fuck yeah. You know, I didn't even think more about it than that. I just went to a recruiter and signed up. And then, yeah, like 90 days later was hopping on the bus. One of my best stories from basic training is that, and this kind of speaks to just my personality as a whole, where it's like, if I think I can get away with something, I'll try. Like every dumb Joe, I had a girlfriend when I went in, and I didn't want to lose contact with her, so I snuck my cell phone in. And you know, it's just like, it's so dumb when I think about it now. It was such a tremendous risk for the actual value that I got out of it. But I took my cell phone in the day one in basic, smuggled it through. They give you like the red zone or like the alibi time when they're like, anybody can turn something in, turn it in now, we won't fuck you, you know, like amnesty period. Yeah. This is the end of your amnesty. And I didn't take advantage of that. Instead, I slit a little hole in the seam of my mattress, and then I shoved my phone down inside the like foam of the mattress and tucked it into these springs so that I felt like it was kind of stuck there, and then pulled my hand out and then would make my bed. And then I became the guy with the phone, right? Because that's a cool guy to know. Until somebody's like, hey, Vance has a fucking cell phone. And I'm like, no, I don't. And then they toss everything. And they looked everywhere. They tossed our fucking lockers. We came in and I was like, oh shit, dude, this is it. Mattresses are everywhere. Pillowcases torn off of everything. But they never got into that flap. So we had like the end of basic, like you do like a little graduation before you go to OSIT. And they give you a weekend off. And I was like, this had just happened before that weekend. So I got rid of my cell phone then. I was like, not worth it. Basic training I was like coming off of college track. I was a little bit of a hothead. I thought basic training was silly to an extent. Like, at least it wasn't as physically demanding as some people were acting like it was. I would rather talk shit and get smoked than like stand there in boredom and not think and let, brain rot. And so I was constantly either talking shit or making jokes or doing beatboxes. And the kids that did not like the PT did not like me. So, yeah, honestly, it's a little cringe when I think back to the way I was in basic training, because I was like, yeah, cringe. The 18 X-ray program, the pipeline looks like this. You go through basic training, you do OSIT or infantry school, and then you go to airborne school. After airborne, they send you to Bragg, and that's where you do SOPSI, which is the Special Operations Preparation Course. And this is the biggest advantage that 18 X-rays get, is that you get a month in the exact same terrain that you're going to be in. Very, very similar terrain. It's not obviously the same training grounds, but it's really similar. And you do, pre-land nav training, you do a bunch of rucking, like you really get conditioned for it. And they say that that's to get you to the condition that you would get if you were in an infantry unit, because they're running all the time and rucking all the time. And airborne school especially, you're just not doing as much PT. In my opinion, it was a huge advantage because it was like doing a train up before the combine or something. I felt very ready when selection started. But selection was its own beast. I guess I have a couple of good stories from selection. One, like right away, on my 7th day of selection, I lost my rifle, which is a very bad thing. And they tell you in the beginning, they're like, you lose your rifle, you're fucking done. And so we were doing land nav prep, and it was like a night prep course, and I had like finished, and I sat down by the road, like in the bushes, in the grass, waiting for a truck to come by to pick us up. And when I saw the truck lights, I just hopped up and I ran over to it. I'm sleep deprived and everything else, but I ran over to the truck and I looked down. I realized I had my rifle, and the cadre was like, "Where the fuck is your rifle?" And I was like, "1 second." Raven, he's like, "Hey, what fucking number are you? Come back." And I like went and looked through the weeds for forever. I couldn't find it. And so I went back to the truck and I was just like, "Does this mean I'm done?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, you guys said if we lose a rifle, we're done. And if I'm done, I don't want to suffer for another, whatever it was, 20 days. And he was like, "Are you telling me you're done?" And I'm like, "I'm not saying I'm done. Are you telling me I'm done?" And he was like, "Get in the fucking truck." And I was like, "All right, I guess I'm not done. Anyways, 2 days later was the STAR course. And I was like, if I don't make it, basically I told myself, if I don't make the STAR course, there's no way I'm going to make it. And like, the passing of the STAR course is relatively low, especially on day one. There was 7 of us that finished. But
7 out of how many?
308.
Wow.
Of the STAR course. Yeah. I was highly motivated after losing that rifle. Honestly, I don't know. I think back about this a lot, and I wonder if I hadn't lost my rifle, would I have had the same level of drive to get through it? Because it's 5 points. It's about 25 clicks. You do it overnight. So it's pitch black. It's raining. It's terrible. And it took me 4.5 hours to find my first point. And I got really lucky also. Like, I was like looking all over this draw to find my point. And then I saw the truck lights coming. So I just like hid down on the side of the road. I watched the truck, how it came in, and he like gave the cadre coffee and then drove out of this fire road. So then I just went and found that fire road and walked in. So I found my first point, and I was like, all right, I've almost lost half my time. I was, 30 minutes away from half my time being over. I was like, if I can make this next point in 2 hours, then I'll keep going. It's all land nav. Yep. Individual land nav, no contact with anybody else, and you're just going. I think you have 10 hours to do the 25 clicks. And so I found my first point, my 1 of 5 in 4.5 hours. So it's not a good pace. And so I knew how to do the process, but it's still at night in the dark, finding things that, it's hard, right? But anyways, I locked in. I found my second point pretty quickly. And I was like, all right, if I can find my third point in another 2 hours, then I'll keep going. If I can find my next point, it was close, or it was much closer. If I can do this one in an hour, then I'll still be on pace. And so I just started huffing and made it. I remember on my 4th point, the cadre was like, "Look at this motherfucker. This motherfucker's going to make it." And it was just like the look in my eyes, I guess. But yeah, I finished, very fortunate. But that's probably my most proud moment in my Special Forces career. Like the 7 of us that finished, they throw you in a truck, they take you back to base camp, and you get to sleep for a whole day. And I just remember riding in that truck being like, okay, fuck, maybe I'll make it. But still, it drove me, because of that rifle, I think I pushed myself harder through the rest of selection than I probably would have without it. And I just have so many fond memories of selection because you go through it with like this group of dudes from the very beginning, and you're all like, half of them I knew from basic, right? Like it was the guys that because I went through a basic training group that was largely made up of 18 x-rays. So it was a bunch of people that had contracts to get to try out. And so those of us that made it through, we were like this tight-knit group that had been through it from the beginning. We got into the same teams that went through all of the special operations course, the Q-Course. That should be easy. Yeah. No, you're on. So it was really fun because you're a part of a big team and you go through it with these same guys, all of STAR course, except for your specialties, like, so as a Green Beret, you go through the basics, like you learn your shooting training, you learn how to go out in the woods and operate like that, how to do all the types of missions that we do, and then you go off to your specialty school. Because we operate by ourselves in austere environments, you have 4 different specialties. You have your Bravo, who's your weapons guy, you have your Echo, who's your comms, you have your Charlie, who's your demolition and your engineer, and then you have your team medic. And the medic course is the longest one, just because we do, it's more, there's more to learn when it comes to the human body than there is to a gun or to a weapon system. And so I was with the same exact guys up until we go to our specialty school, and then I went with just the other medics to the medic portion. But the medic course was wild, dude. I mean, like, selection is absolutely a mental stressor. Like, going back into once you're on team, you'll get pulled for different details to go back and support training. And when you go back and support training, you realize that none of it is that difficult, right? Like, accountants run further. There's people that are into rucking that just do regular jobs and they go do way harder rucks. But it is the mental challenge of not knowing how far you're going, not knowing what time you have to wake up, not knowing how much you get to eat. Like, taking away those things really messes with people's heads. Way more than you think it does. Like, from the outside, it seems like, dude, whatever. You just keep running. You got 4 hours of sleep. You should be fine. But like 4 hours of sleep on repeat, mixed in with a couple of days where you're not sleeping at all. And then this stress of, am I going to make it? Am I going to get sent needs of the Army? Like, for an 18 X-ray, for me especially, it's not like I'm going back to my unit where I already belong and have a thing. It's like I could be sent anywhere, Alaska, just the worst places that you don't want to go. And as a medic also, like, once you get to the medical portion, you don't even have to get sent to infantry. You could get sent for a medical detail. So it becomes more and more stressful the further that you get, and you're like more committed to not failing. But selection in the beginning, you're so amped up. Everybody else is very amped up. You have no concept of what's happening next. You don't know what tomorrow's training is. They don't really yell at you. Like, for the most part, the Special Forces course is from selection all the way through. They call it a gentleman's course. Like, you have to be a big boy to be here. So we're not going to yell at you to do the right things. If you don't do the right things, you're just fucking done. That doesn't mean that they're not yelling at you during PT or while you're getting smoked, but it's not like a degrading type of yell. It's like, fucking finish, pussy. Or pick your weakness up and put it in your pocket. Like, that sort of thing. But I just feel like that's motivational. The most challenging part of selection for me was the same as almost the whole military. It's the waiting. I hate the waiting, and like just getting called out to the rocks to stand there for 4 hours to see who is not gonna stand that suffering. To me, that is the worst suffering. I would rather be walking an undisclosed amount of distance, because at least I'm moving, than standing still. So like those kinds of challenges, like middle of the night, get pulled out of the barracks or get pulled out of your huts, all your shit's taken out, and you just stand there for 4 hours. That to me was the worst. Like, I remember the day before the STAR course, we were out doing land nav, and like they tell you these preparatory rounds are not graded, right? This is for your own edification. It's for you to develop your skills. And I just done SOPSI, so I wasn't gonna like get my legs tired walking around a bunch. So like the 3 prep days, I just failed every one of them. Like I would just go out into the woods, take a nap, and eat an MRE. On the 3rd day, one of my buddies was coming along, and he was like, he like stumbled. I saw him. I like peeked out from my little hideout. I was like, "Hey, Kaluchi," and he came over. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm saving my energy for the STAR course." He was like, "Dude, you don't think they'll care?" I was like, "They told us that they wouldn't." And he was like, "They're just fucking telling you that." And I was like, "Calm down, dude. We save our energy. We win tomorrow." He's like, "I'm not fucking doing this," and he fucking bailed. And people knew I could do land knife too. Like, I would come in at the end of the day with like 1 point done, and they'd be like, "Bullshit, Vance." And I was like, "Dude, I tried my hardest." But they didn't count those days. So I won. I saved my energy, and I won the STAR course. To be honest, I was always looking, if it didn't matter, I wasn't going to do it just to do it, right? Like, I'm if the stakes are there, I'll show up. Or like if it would matter, if somebody was going to get smoked because I didn't do my thing, then I'm going to do my thing. Like, I'm not going to let my buddies down. Except in basic, I did talk too much, like I said. Yeah, but there wasn't really room to skate by in terms of like not performing on the things that matter. Like it's very clear the standards that you have to hit for the things that matter. And so skating by would be very difficult. Do I think that people made it in that shouldn't have? Yeah, for sure. Like if you were a gray man that just did the right things enough, didn't necessarily mean that you were a great performer or that people liked you, but you could get through if you could still hit the standards. So when the way you find out that you pass selection or you failed selection is at the very end of it. You've gone through everything. There's a last ruck where it's like an undisclosed distance and you just take off and you go. And then at the completion of that ruck, then everybody stands around. I think we got chow hall and you're just waiting for them to add up your scores because everything that you do through the process is scored, or everything that they tell you is scored is scored. And so they just literally come out and everybody's in formation. They read your numbers off. Because everybody wears a number, no names, no ranks, which is the other interesting thing. I got a captain to quit selection. I feel a little bit bad about it, but not really, because it wasn't the right person. I mean, like, he was just dragging. We do a bunch of team events. So you're like, figure out how to move this 10,000 pounds, the 4 miles that you're supposed to. And you have to rig up. It probably wasn't 10,000 pounds. I'd like people to think it was. But it's a bunch of crap, and you're going to rig up a shitty cart with only 2 wheels, and it needs 3 wheels in order to work. So now you've got people holding this, or you're doing like a long distance carrying a humongous log between 4 people or whatever it is. And this captain was just weak as shit, and he was holding our team up all the time. And one day I was sick of it. I was in the back carrying an ammo crate with him, and it's a terrible exercise. You're just carrying a full ammo crate with one other guy. I forget the distance, but it was one of the ones that sucked more. And he kept dropping it just because his hand hurt. And it's like, and I just couldn't take it. So I started digging out on him. Sir, you got to do the right thing and fucking quit. You're not fit for this. You are too weak. You need to quit, sir. For just miles, I was just berating him. And finally he was like, fuck it, dude, I quit. And I was like, yes, we got rid of that ammo can, picked up the pace. But I felt bad about it for a long time. Like, I was like, man, I really pushed that guy to fold. But then I'm also like, if that guy would fold off of some fucking 18 X-ray E4, because I didn't even have E5 until you make it through, then he deserves to quit. So at the end of selection, they read off your numbers and you get chosen, or if you make it through that pass, then you go to the Q-Course. And the Q-Course, it depends on what your MOS is, but the Q-Course could be anywhere from just about a year to a year and a half, with all of the MOS trainings or the specialty trainings range in the length, but the medic one being the longest, and it takes a year. The next one being, I think, 6 months, and the other 2 are 4. So I chose the medic path. My language was French. So the Q-Course as a whole, one of the things that separates Green Berets is that we're all proficient in a second language. And so the language that you choose largely determines the force that you go to, or the group that you go to, and I chose French, which sent me to 10th group in the end. But for me, it just meant that I had a shorter language period than the guys who did Farsi. And I did not want to be in school any longer than I had to, especially since I was doing the medic course. So I went the French route. Medic is my MOS, and that was because I wanted to live in Colorado, and I figured after the military, I would go do something medical. Like, it seemed like being in the ER or that world where it's high-paced and stressful, that would be cool. So that was my move. And the first phase that I went to was language school. It used to be the way that everybody did it, I think, is that we would all go to language school. And that's a 4-month, just go to school 6 days a week. It's 5 days a week. It was 6 days a week sometimes if you weren't doing well. And that was fine. It was fun, sort of, because it was just like the dudes that you're with, you do hard PT, and then you go to language school. Very easy compared to the rest of the course. I mean, it's not for some people that suck at language, but for the most part, you don't lose a lot of guys in language. But I remember I got in trouble during language school because instead of listening, I had drawn this portrait of my teacher riding a centaur, and she was scantily clad. And she was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "It's a drawing of you." And she was like, "That's not how I dress." And I said, "It is in my mind." And she was like, out. And then I had to go talk to the master sergeant. But he thought the drawing was pretty good, so I got away with it. Me and my buddy, he loved it. We would always goof off together. And she loved us also because we were okay at doing school. Like we were passing. And we were fun. But that got me in trouble. And then I wasn't allowed to draw anymore. I got better at language that way, though. The 18 X-ray program doesn't strip enough of your civilian tendencies from you. Now, the Army would tell you that they like that because it gives people that think differently and they're not just so wrapped into what you're supposed to do. I might have been on the extreme edge of it. You know, they called me Sergeant Yo because I would address people as like, yo, and they don't like that. And I was the youngest guy on my team by far. And I didn't realize that people see me as a silly goose and not like when people see you as a silly goose, especially in a professional environment like the military, they think you're an idiot. And so when we went to SUT, which is small unit tactics, it's this period where you do all of your training in the woods. It's a lot of periods where you're out for weeks at a time just doing FTX style training. And they rotate who's in charge for each mission. You know, you'll have a team leader and you'll have a team sergeant who's in charge for each mission. And I remember I was put in charge for my first mission and I worked really hard for everybody else. So everybody liked me, even though they called me Sergeant Yo. And so when it was my turn, everybody worked hard for me and I did everything right. And we were like, I didn't realize people thought I was an idiot, but we made it to our final point. And like, I got under the tarp with the point man to check our location and to do the tasks we needed to do. And like the senior NCO on our team got under there and he was like, yo, what the fuck? And I was like, what's wrong? And he was like, where the fuck did this come from? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you did a good job. And I was like, what? And he's like, I thought you were an idiot. And I was like, cool. So that was kind of a learning point. But honestly, everybody on that team then would vouch for me later in the course because I would get this same reaction every time I walked in someplace with my hands in my pockets, acting like a civilian. People would be like, this guy's a clown. And then I would have this senior NCO or other guys from that team be like, no, he's just a goofy, you know? So it set me up for success. But that was a learning point for me in my life to realize that when you're silly, people will assume you're an idiot. The time when I was the most stressed about whether or not I was going to pass was the medic course. Because you're taking at least one test a week that is pass or fail. So if you fail, you get one recycle. If you fail 2 recycles, then you're out. And so for me, like that, when it came to physical stuff, I was like, I can do this. And I also I didn't see myself as not capable of leadership just because I goofed off all the time. Like most of my life, it was like the teachers that got a lot out of me would realize that if they gave me responsibility, then I would do a better job. But if you left me understimulated, I would just ADD out. So I wasn't really concerned in SUT. Again, I was surprised they thought I couldn't do it. Which was the big learning point. But I was concerned when it came to reading books. And the medic course is so much reading, dude. It's my nightmare when it comes to that. It's the first time. So I went on ADD medication during it. I had been prescribed medication, ADD before the Army in high school. As soon as I got to high school, every teacher was like, hey, have you guys gotten him tested? And I was afraid of ADD medication because I had a friend that was on a bad dose and he became like a zombie and everybody would tease him for it. And at that point I was like, my personality is mostly what I have going for me. So I cannot sacrifice this. And so I just wouldn't take it. I would just sell it to my friends in high school. And then in the medic course, I was like, I literally can't keep up. I have C's in this thing. And this is 3 months in. And one of my instructors was like, dude, if you have ADD, go get on meds. And I was like, you can do that? And he was like, yeah, just don't say you're in the Q-Course. So I did. And listen, it was on my profile. You could have seen it as a doctor. Nobody ever said anything to me. But I've heard that you're not supposed to. I don't know if it's true. Anyways, I did. And it changed my life, dude. I could not believe it. The amount of difference that taking medication made for me in terms of being able to do things that naturally I fucking hated doing, which was reading books. I went from the bottom of that class to one of the top in that class simply by taking ADD medicine, by taking Adderall. So that was a huge experience for me. It also made me way less scared of all those tests. because like, yeah, reading comprehension, I have like a form of dyslexia, like a visual processing disorder. It's like I mix shit up. Reading comprehension's always been my lowest score on every test. But once I started taking Adderall, it was like I could perform like a normal person in the things that I sucked at. So it was huge. But yeah, as a whole, my experience in the course, I wasn't really scared except for selection and the medic course, because those were the two where I saw my weaknesses winning. And I lost my rifle. Yeah, and then we have SERE school, which you can't talk about like the specifics of the training, but SERE school is a survival, evasion, resistance, escape, and it is a brutal process. I mean, like in terms of mind games, that one was the most surprising, because you're with people that you know, that you've been through a lot of shit with, and to watch them crack simply by like basically, you know, you would be presented information that did not align with your reality, and they're just trying to fire you up with propaganda. And the way that people couldn't separate reality from what was going on and what they were trying to get out of you, it's like reacting to a troll on the internet, right? It's like if you get so sucked in that you're like, no, that's not right, like then you're fucked. And I couldn't believe how many people snapped in that way, where you'd be like, dude, they're fucking with us, you know? But you're super, super sleep deprived. I mean, they suck the sleep out of you in a way that you aren't ready for. And then they beat the crap out of you also. So that is a mind game. But so SERE school, it's hard to fail. You have to medically be dropped, or like totally verbally be going, I'm done. I want out of this whole thing. Right. If you get injured, they'll typically recycle you just because it is so injury prone. I mean, we went through it with a psychologist. If you want to work as a psychologist in SERE school, you have to go through the course. And we had a female psychologist going through with us, and she straight up got her arm broken on like day 3. She just got slapped during an interrogation, went down, arm snapped. And so like injury happens all the time, and you have to be physically ready for it. We lost 2 or 3 guys to cold exposure during ours because we went through in February. They take all your clothes. You're just getting sprayed with a fire hose, standing there naked, having this little Asian woman make fun of your penis. Everyone's as small. It's cold. But yeah, it is, in terms of like things that I look back on and am grateful for. I'm super grateful for SERE school, because most of it is finding out where the limits are and what you can actually do and how far your body can actually go and what hunger really feels like and whether or not you have to listen to your feelings or how much you can keep going. And so I harken back to that in my day-to-day life in terms of like, all right, don't be a pussy. It's not SERE school. Yeah. But yeah, I can't say very much about it. But so the very end of the course, after you go through all of your phases, there's what's called Robin Sage. And Robin Sage is a fucking trip, because they get all of these people that are involved or that live in this town, and they hire a bunch of actors, and it simulates the idea of unconventional warfare. You do missions inside of this town where like the veterinarian clinic is, they're in on it. Like they're still running business as normal, but you're supposed to do ops around and inside of this city. And you also have these actors that are all playing either, the bad guys, the captors that will capture you if you do the wrong thing or end up in the wrong spot, don't make your rally point. And you also have, dog teams chasing you. You're surviving off the land. You're making deals with Indige. It's like a really cool, they've really built that program out, and it's the infrastructure around it is pretty phenomenal. Dude, the medic course was, although it was the scariest part for me because you could pass or fail every single week on a different test, it was also like such an incredible bonding experience for the guys that you go through it with, because it is so didactic, because I spent so many nights either sleeping in the schoolroom or in the schoolhouse or in my truck. You get bonded over what you have to go through together, like anything else in the military. And it's just like wild shit. Like we do these goat labs, which PETA hates, but they're an unbelievable training opportunity. And like, I think that we've gone away from them, or PETA's won at this point. Maybe with Trump back, we'll get the goats back. But when I first went in, we kill a bunch of goats. That's just the reality. We use a bunch of goats as training. We do live tissue training. The first 6 months of the medical course for a Green Beret is all trauma-based. And then the second 6 months is internal medicine or like continued care, jungle medicine, all the rest of it. And so a lot, like now SEALs go to their own school. but like Rangers, it used to be Rangers, SEALs, and whatchamacallits, corpsmen would all go to the first 6 months. If they were like MARSOC corpsmen or whatever, you would go to the first 6 months, the trauma modules. So it's kind of fun because you're in there with different forces and you get to see like, all right, this is their special operations. This is how these guys go. I have a lot of people ask me what's the difference between a Green Beret and a Navy SEAL. And I think I just tell this story. When we were in the medical portion, we were all standing out in formation in the morning. And like as a Green Beret, they were like standing there, we're all in formation, and our cadre is just yelling at us like, you guys aren't shit. You haven't proven anything. You're fucking wannabes. Like he's just telling us how it is. And then you look over at the Navy SEAL formation and their cadre is out front. And he's like, you guys are goddamn Navy SEALs. You're God's gift to earth. You're the fucking best. Fucking act like it. And I was like, that's a different tone. You know, like they're getting the same thing out of you, but that's a pump up. Like you're the fucking best. And our guys were like, shut your mouths and don't talk, which probably explains why they have such better books than we do, you know? No, if I could go back, I'd been a Navy SEAL in a heartbeat, dude. You can talk more, you get way more PR, and probably more, like the bases are in way better places. Who wants to be in Fayetteville? I'd rather be in San Diego.
Coronado.
Yeah, Coronado.
Yeah.
Once I had made it through the first 6 months of the medical school, I started to relax a little bit. I was like, okay, I can do this, right? Like I was really concerned about the amount of reading and all that shit. I mean, like I should have been more concerned getting into it, but I had delusional confidence. I was just like, yeah, I'll do medic because that's the best opportunities for me after the military, like go medical route. But during that course, I was nervous all the time, or like, especially the first 6 months, I was just like, fuck, dude, this, because you start to have friends that have failed and then gone needs the army to someplace that sucks. And you're like, I do not want to do that. And then once I was halfway through the medical course, I started to relax a little bit more. Like I didn't expect myself to fail at Robin Sage, and I did feel like it was more of a routine. Like we all felt like we were going to go do this thing, but I also think that we were all a little bit delusional because we were the back end of all the fun, or like the fun of war. And so we were hearing the stories about what the Army used to be like and what being a Green Beret used to be like. And then when I got to team, I was like, oh, it's much less the Wild West. We're not playing by the same rules that our cadre during the course were telling us about. You know, their stories were almost from a different era of the military. And part of it's just that the amount of conflict and even the amount of the force that was there was smaller when I got there. But yeah, I guess my general feeling was like, all right, we're fucking doing this. I was already thinking like, what's Delta Force? How do I go that route? You know, like I was a kid with no real concept of what, like I was young. I was the youngest guy by a good margin. I think I had to be 21. I turned 21 in basic training at the very end, like the day of our final ruck, I turned 21 years old. And you have to be 21 in order to try out for SF. And so by the time I finished the course, I was 23. So when I got to a team, I was the youngest guy on my team by 8 years, I believe. So it was like, I was still a delusional kid, and I got treated that way to an extent, which is good. But yeah, I think like for the most part, I was just having fun. I also hadn't gotten married yet. Like I didn't get married until towards the end of the Q course. And so like as an individual, there was like very low stakes for me, except for getting failed. It was like, these are my boys. This is what we're doing. We're the guys that have made it through this far. We're going to make it the rest of the way. You may have heard that Green Berets use or do live tissue training, which means that we use goats to practice a lot of our stuff on. And that's because the important parts of their anatomy line up to ours, at least in a way that is effective, and they're cheap. So you can buy a lot of them and kill a lot of them fast. And these goats are heroes. I truly believe that goats save people's lives. And I'll tell you a story that exemplifies this. I had gone through the medic portion, the trauma portion. At the end of each 6 months, you do a month. You do 2 weeks on an ambulance, and you do two weeks in a hospital, mostly in the ER. And my first night in the ER, this crackhead came in. She was coding, just a gross person, teeth fucking sideways, mouth full of gunk. And the trauma surgeon there was like, who wants to intubate? I was like, me. Like we were just excited to be there. And we had no... like they really do. You look at the difference between like the Green Beret medics and like these medical students who are on, 4th, 5th year and they're doing their rotations. And those guys are all timid because they have not gotten their hands bloody yet. They have not gotten their hands inside of a breathing thing. And for me, it was automatic. I just went, I did the process, opened her up, stuck the tube in, inflated the cuff. I was like, great, done. And the doctor was like, was that your first intubation? And I was like, yep. And he took the x-ray. He's like, fucking perfect placement, dude. That's incredible. And for me, in that moment, I was just like, oh shit, these goats save lives. Because all I had done up until that point is open a goat's mouth and fucking visualize my target and hit it. And then in a person, it was already muscle memory. And it just worked that easy. And like we would notoriously hit innovations. We would do, we would be able to stick veins that nobody else could stick because we just had so many reps. And we did them on each other too. You know, like when we're going through the course, you just be staying up in your dorm room or in your barracks, getting drunk with your buddies and practicing different sticks. You know, like we had a lot of leeway around how much we practiced our innovations. And it makes a huge difference. One, you've done them all to yourself. Your buddy's done them to you. You've had shit up your nose. You've had shit up your ass. You know, like, literally. And so you're very comfortable going into go mode. The patient becomes the patient, not a person, and you do what you need to do. And I attribute so much of that to the fact that these goats gave their lives to save soldiers. So, fuck PETA. They would replicate actual wounds with guns, with knives. So like you would get blast wounds by doing like, they would put shrapnel around it and then they would shoot it with a shotgun. And it would just be like, you know, you would be waiting for your turn to go as a medic. They're 100 yards away. You'd hear the pop and then medic. And then you would sprint over and you would figure out where they had shot it, where they had stabbed it. You know, like they would replicate whatever the major wounds were, you know, sucking chest wounds. They'd pull out the guts and give you a bleeder, you know, all that stuff. And so you're just you're doing it. You're doing live tissue trauma medicine under high stress with like, and you know, like they're trying to make those scenarios feel as real as possible. You got a guy fucking screaming at you. You got another guy that's fake crying over there. Your buddy is, and you do it a bunch of times on your buddies first, right? They do moulage. So they like paint up your buddy with different wounds. They give him like a card that tells him his symptoms. And then you have to go through and figure it out. And then you move on to goats and you're starting to do it like that, where it's like literally this thing will bleed out if you don't do the right interventions. So the stress and pressure of doing it on live tissue makes a tremendous difference. I mean, like you can't replicate something that breathes and feels warm. I mean, the dummies are getting pretty good, so maybe you can at this point. But at that time, there was no comparison to using dummy stuff. So they put the goats under general anesthesia, usually like ketamine and or ketamine and propofol, that combination. So they'll just put the goats out. It's just a limp bag. They're not making them scream. But then, like, dude, you end up hating these goats because they want to die. You know, like the end of your portion with it, like the end of the whole year-long training is 2 weeks where you keep this goat alive. So they'll give it multiple injuries. One of them will lead to an amputation, but like you have to go do the initial trauma care, then put this goat onto a stretcher. And it's wild, dude. It's like, it's like doing rodeo. What is that? Roping, where you're like jumping off the thing, like you're moving at that pace with all these interventions under simulated gunfire, pulling them into cover, doing your, going through actions on, and then building a hasty stretcher, dragging your goat off, and then you keep that goat alive for 2 to 3 weeks. I can't remember exactly how long it is, but this goat wants to die, right? Like you do its amputation, you're trying to keep its wound clean. Every time you walk away for 10 seconds, it's biting and chewing off its bandages. Like I slept in my goat's cage to stop it from killing itself so that I could pass that part. I mean, that is the hardest part of it, and it's simply because getting the goat to just do what's good for it is so difficult. So you keep that thing alive. If you make it to the end of the period, then you pass, and then they just kill the goat. And you can't eat them. They're full of gunk, you know. They're so pumped full of chemicals, and then the thing that you kill it with is a barbiturate at the end, so it would make it toxic. From medical school, you go to Robin Sage, and at Robin Sage, they bring back together all the different MOSs or all the different specialties, and those guys go through Robin Sage together, and you function as if you're a team. So there'll be 8 to 12 of you. Each of you has your own job the same way that you would on a team, and you're going in as if it's unconventional warfare. You're making friends, winning hearts and minds with the local indige population, and then going out from there and doing missions, collecting intel, building an intel packet. Then you build your mission set, you execute the mission, and you succeed or fail. So then you go to team, and you're hoping that you get the team that aligns with your language and your specialty. But like, especially for medics, it can sometimes be they just need more medics, so they'll pull you to some place that you don't belong. I got lucky. I got assigned to 10th Group, so I went to Fort Carson, Colorado, which was great in terms of weather and facilities, all top notch. But I got put on a team. I showed up at team at a weird time because we used to have 3 battalions. They'd stood up a 4th battalion, and the 4th battalion wasn't totally manned, and they sent a lot of like broken dudes that needed a down cycle to 4th battalion. And so I ended up getting sent to 4th battalion because they were filling it up, and got put on a team. I got put on a mobility team. So each special forces team, at least this is the way it used to be, each team would have its own specialty. So I was put on a mobility team, which our goal was to move fast. And so like we would do Zodiacs, ATVs, the UTVs, anything that went fast. Go to mobility school you go like driving school for Humvees. We did, the equine school. I don't remember what that's called. Horse soldier school, where you ride horses and donkeys. That was our team's specialty. And we did a lot of rucking as well, even though we weren't a ruck team. But we got sent to Eastern Europe as that's everywhere that we went. And I actually got stuck. I thought it was lame at the time. I mean, it was lame in comparison to going to combat. I was so jealous of my friends that were going to combat because I was like, I trained to do this. I'm good at this shit. Yeah, I looked at it like being a professional basketball player and sitting the bench, or like getting sent to Europe to play because nobody cares. No, I was just like, I felt like I wasn't doing the thing that I trained to do because we just did a lot of joint training with these European forces and like stabilizing some intel collection and stuff like that, but it's all relatively passive and boring. And yeah, at the time I was super disappointed. It was the biggest thing that stopped me. Like when my wife wanted me to get out right away. She was like, this sucks. And to be fair, it's way worse to be a wife in special forces than it is to be in special forces. Because even when we're home, we're traveling constantly. Like we're always going to training. And half of that's because the guys want to leave their wives. No, not all the guys. But it's just like the pace of training is high. The tempo is high. We're always doing something. And, even when you're bored, your team sergeant's like, all right, go get generators certified. And you're going to the generator school. It's anything and everything that you could possibly need to support your team because you don't have the structure of the big force or the big fob. You have to do all of your support yourself. I wasn't the only one that felt that way about not getting to go to combat, but most of my team had been to combat. Most of them were fucked up from combat. Like we had the same issues that everybody else has in terms of suicide, in terms of mental health struggles, a bunch of broken dudes that have been through a bunch of shit. And so most of them did not feel the same way. They were like, oh, great. We get to go to Europe for a while instead of get shot at. Now, obviously, like if I had have stayed in, I could have probably worked my way onto a team that was getting rotated to Afghanistan, which was the biggest, like it was hard for me not to do that because I was like, this is what I trained to do. But I was also like sort of disenfranchised with the Army as a whole, only that like, I was like, I'm a better medic than a lot of these. I have better PT scores. I have, I shoot better. Why can't I go do the next thing? Like, why can't I get the next rank? Which I understand, or I understood, time and service and all the rest of it. But I was just too antsy. I either wanted to go, try to go to Orange or Delta, or at least go to one of our elite teams. I enjoyed so many parts of it. I took for granted how many parts of it were awesome. For instance, like, so much fun is built into the military. At least in Special Forces it was. You would shoot guns on Monday, ride ATVs on Tuesday, jump out of planes on Thursday, and drink beers with your buddy at the end of every day. And so that part of it was great. But yeah, I would have just liked to never be bored, and that was impossible. Being on a team changed my perspective in several ways, especially interacting with some of these guys that had been through some of the heavier shit, right? And it's always like, you don't know how much is a rumor, how much is real, but it's like, oh, you've got guys with knife kills. You've got guys with, ridiculous stories about the way that they've earned badges of death. And those guys, they all were on this one particular team that had a really hard time and had a really high suicide rate afterwards. There was 2 or 3 dudes sleeping on the team couch all the time. Marriages were, I wanted to have a good marriage, and it was virtually impossible in that world because it's just, and I get it. My perspective was changed actually by my first team sergeant, because he said, I don't see it as PTSD. I see it as Superman syndrome, right? When we go overseas, or especially when you're in Afghanistan or Iraq, it's like, here's the mission. You need to get to the top of that hill. They're like, great, we'll take the Humvees. We'll drive over that house. We'll go through that wall. We'll get to the top of that building. And it's like, you come back, or the top of that hill, you come back to the real world, and there's all these limitations around what you can and can't do. And you're also like expected to be normal when the government spent $2 million making you abnormal, disassociating from your feelings, disassociating from reality. So it was very easy to see. And I think part of the reason it was easy to see is because I wasn't fucked up, because I hadn't been through the shit, and because the Army had not taken the civilian out of me like they're supposed to. And so, yeah, it was dark to see, but I still didn't think to myself like, oh, I don't want to go to combat and be like these guys. I had 2 guys from my team have killed themselves, or that I was close with, and then several other buddies from, basic or the Q course. To be honest with you, with one of the guys, when I found out, I was like, yep, that makes sense. And he was one of the guys that was more like clearly fucked up, deeply somber a lot of times. I made a real effort to be buddies with him. One, he had tons of combat experience, and in terms of like teaching you about the craft, incredible wealth of knowledge. But like the general cloud of sadness that surrounded him was just palpable, right? And he was always seeking some other out that was, outside of the bounds of acceptable, or like the rules for sure. And so for him, I wasn't surprised. I was deeply saddened, obviously, but I was just like, fuck, dude, he couldn't escape it, And he tried all the different therapies. He was doing all kinds of things to try to get away from it. But yeah, I think he was a part of the time when there was no eye in the sky. There was no oversight. It was too loose, I think. And I think it's very easy. I think people just don't understand this idea of how easily you're at war. You do not have empathy for the other team. If you have empathy for the other team, you're not good at your job. And so you have to hold that in your head while also holding in the reality that this is a person with kids and all the rest of it. Like, you can't fucking do that. And so I think put in a situation, in a system, in a culture where being alpha and being the warrior is the game. We need those people. Then to come back and then process some of the decisions that you made that you regret, or that in the moment happened, I think it's just really hard. That would be very difficult to handle. And then if you don't have structure, family, other things that are grounding you, then it becomes virtually impossible. I mean, like, you know so many people, we all know so many people, and you just go, what the fuck, dude? But also, you know what it's like to be in a dark spot, and to then like to amplify that dark spot with substance abuse and a culture that requires you to maintain a certain attitude. That's just really that's an impossible situation. So often you're still in the environment, right? So like the idea of getting rid of the pain, one, you've been living with it for years, right? You've been going, it's not necessarily that it just happened on your last cycle or anything. It could be whatever's haunting you from 8 years ago. I mean, I know what that first guy was talking about. He was haunted by stuff that was a decade old. It was when he was new to a team, like when he went through in the initial push, and it was still, that's what weighed on him. And you're in a culture where you sort of don't see a way. You've tried everything inside of this box to feel better. And so like the idea that there are other things outside of that box, then you would have to lose your identity and go to a different place and become a different person to then fix this thing. And it feels impossible. So I get that. I get how hard that would be. I had a feeling of like, what a waste once I got out. You know what I mean? Like, I remember I moved straight from the military. I moved out to Los Angeles, and rented a shitty old apartment in Beverly Hills. I had no idea where to live. It was like the thing my wife would accept. And like I was out walking my dogs, and this dude across the street was just talking shit to this lady. Like he was screaming at her, and she had a three-legged dog. I knew who she was. She walked her three-legged dog around the neighborhood. He was like, "You let this fucking dog piss on my lawn one more time, and I'll fucking kill you." And I just go, "Hi, no," and like just pivoted. Like just you don't fucking do that. Pivoted, started walking straight across the street at this guy. You don't fucking talk to her. And he goes, "If you touch me, I'll sue." Like that was just his thing, and I was just like, "Oh fuck, dude! All of my skills are useless here." Like it's just, yeah. I feel like I went to a summer camp where I learned a lot of things that you can't use in real life. I hope the apocalypse happens just to make all that training worth it. And I chose to get out for I chose to get out for two reasons. My wife wanted to, and she told me I had to. My wife hated it, which is fair. Like I get why she hated it. She was like a nice person, and the military is not a place for nice people. I was also like, it was far away from her family and all that stuff. I give her a lot of credit. I was also like gone all the time. I get all that. I didn't want to stay that bad because I was bored already. Like I had done well. I was good at my job. Everyone liked me. But to go to the next, like I knew to go Delta. Like I went to that recruitment and I was like, this is cool. This is like the next level of training. I like this. And my wife was like, no fucking way. She like went on Google. She's like, how much you'll be gone? You know how many of these dudes die? Like, no, we're not doing that. It's either me or you're out. And so I got out. And I was also interested in other stuff. Like I never intended to do the Army forever. My thought process was like, oh, I've fucked up my life. I've gotten in trouble. I've lost a lot of opportunity. I should go get my shit together and then I'll move on from there. And so I was like on my way out, I was doing a bunch of applications to medical school because my plan was there's several pipelines where you can go from special forces medic into like being a physician's assistant or, like what's the other one? Physician's assistant or nurse practitioner. Those two options. There's a lot of pipelines for us. So I thought I would go that route and then I could pursue medicine and stay like in a trauma, high excitement world, but make more money and have a more stable situation for the family. So that was my plan. And then like literally 2 months before I got out, I was just like, this isn't what I want to do. I want to go. Well, really, I had done my final rotation at a hospital and I had spent time just with another trauma surgeon who was very disenfranchised. And he was like, this shit's not that fun, dude. And he was like walking me through the parts that you don't watch as the special forces medic hanging out just during the fun part. He's like, here's the pathway that you're going to go on. Here's where you're going to end up. Here's your earning potential. Like, if you're not in love with this, don't do it. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not in love with all that paperwork. I'm not going to do that or that much school. And so I decided, I was like, all right, I'll go back to what I wanted to do before, which was entertainment industry. And like, I was always, I'll tell you a funny story. When I went to my sergeant major in the company, because, like when you're ready to ETS, you got to go talk to everybody. They just spent a bunch of money on you. I was also like a good soldier. They did not want me to go. So my team sergeant first gave me a bunch of shit, told me I couldn't leave. Like, no, I'm not, you can't even go talk to sergeant major. You're not fucking leaving. Like, just resign, dude. Come on. And I finally was like, dude, I'm getting out. Like, I'm going to do it. And he was like, all right, go fucking tell sergeant major. And so I sat down in sergeant major's office and I was like, hey, sergeant major, I'm going to ETS. I'm going to get out. And he goes, oh, you're going to fucking get out, huh? What are you going to fucking do? And I was like, I'm going to move to Hollywood. And he was like, oh, really? You think you're going to be an actor or something? And I was like, I don't know. I just want to do something in the entertainment space. And he was like, I always knew you were a faggot. And he said, but if anybody can do it, your gay ass can. Get out of here. And so that was it. I still was silly, right? Like I never lost my silliness. And so humor has always been my route into places. And my wife got a job working for this lady who worked out at this gym called Rise Movement. And it was like, it's a celebrity hotspot. They train all these humongous celebrities. And so she got me an interview. When I was in 10th group, I had done a bunch of extra training stuff for my own edification. Like I got very into Olympic lifting. I was very into fitness. I would hang out at the Olympic Training Center, talk with their coaches, our coaches. We had a really good program as well. And so that was easy for me. It was an easy transition to like go, I'll be a trainer while I figure everything else out. And so I got into personal training, got my certifications from NASM, whatever you're supposed to get. And my wife's boss got me an interview at this gym working for this guy, or basically he hired me to prep actors for action roles. And so like my day one, I walked in and Bradley Cooper was training. And then it was, I prepped John Krasinski for 13 hours. I traveled the world with Matt Damon. I worked with a bunch of these huge, awesome actors. And those guys are all like excited to be around a special forces guy. They got a ton of questions. You're bringing that energy to the environment. And so I feel just pretty much lucky in terms of how it went for me. I didn't have that hard of a time like fitting in because I was still silly, but I definitely struggled with the fact that like people were full of shit and what somebody said they would do is not what they would do. And like that you couldn't rely on people the same way. That was my biggest. I got in with a couple of vet groups. Found another writer, this guy, Daryl Fannin, who was getting his MFA from Loyola Marymount, and we became buddies. So I had like this day-to-day partner through this thing that understood both sides, right? That had been through the military side that was in this world. A lot of my other friends came from Veterans in Film and Television, which is an organization in LA. And so like I had a community of people that both understood the background and were pursuing the same thing as me. So we had a bunch of shared interests. And then the gym life was just so exciting. You know what I mean? It was like another form of great excitement. Traveling with an actor, going on set, prepping these people for these roles, that was as good as it gets, There's this guy, this really big consultant named Jim Deaver, Sergeant Major Deaver, I believe is his name. And I got into his team. I did like specialized extra is what they'll call a lot of it, like where you're driving in a Humvee or you have to wear a uniform and do something. But really, my role on set, I was just a trainer. So like, and because training was the best fucking job that I could have ever gotten coming out of it. I had no idea. It was like not an intentional thing. I was driving to California. My wife was like, why don't you become a trainer? And her friend worked at Equinox. She was like, let me ask her what you have to do. And so that was it. And I just ordered the book, took the test, and then got lucky going into this gym. But yeah, it was the best. I would just be Matt's trainer on set. I didn't have to go to set if I didn't want to, but like if he was like doing a shirt off scene or something, then you would get him a pump beforehand. But most of my job was train the guy in the morning, before they went to set, and then I could do whatever the fuck I wanted for the day. But I wanted to go to set so I could learn. Dude, all the time I would make jokes or I would just talk about the fact that I had a bunch of absolutely useless skills. Like unless somebody kicks in the door here, like most of what I know how to do is not going to help us. It definitely, if I think about the individual skills, that's absolutely true, right? Like we're not going to have to clear a room unless shit has hit the fan. But when I think about the general principles, like how to show up, how to do what you're supposed to do, how to wake up early, how to be tired and hungry, like that shit, I believe is a major driver in why I'm successful in real life, is just going, okay, these parts of that are worthwhile and I need to keep those things. I need to remind myself of what I'm capable of, harken back to the experiences that I went through. I look at special forces, honestly, like the best version of college that I could have done. And honestly, not that much difference in time because it was 5 years that my entire contract was. And so it was this window of life that really formed me and gave me, a lot more self-control and discipline, which makes a humongous difference in the real world. Personally, I use what I learned in the Army a shitload today because I run a fitness company, a community of dads. It's called the Dad Unit, and it is all built to give like civilian dads, and we got some vets in there too, but mostly to give you the structure, accountability, and team environment of like being on a team. And so you go through this 90 days together. I'm constantly just telling them stories, or I do a morning motivation every day where I'll either get a quote from history, or I'll tell them a story from a drill sergeant or a fucking quote that somebody funny used to say or whatever it is to just pump them up and get them focused. But the principles that were driven into me, my goal is to just drive those that are valuable in civilian life into these people. And people not only love it, but they get a lot out of it. Like the ability to disassociate from your feelings and just do the action at hand is one of the most valuable things that you can have, right? So many people fall prey to their feelings. And if you can learn to go like, that's just a feeling, I don't have to listen to that, then you could do whatever you want.
Mm. So is this program focused on fathers?
Yeah, dads. We let not dads in. We call them, that's our uncle program. But like, you have to share foundational values. At the end of the day, like my goal is to be around a bunch of other dudes. And this is not just for the people for my clients. Like I built this program because I wanted to be a part of it. I miss so much the team experience that you get in the military. Like it just, outside of law enforcement and fire, like there's just not that same vibe, or sports teams, I guess, professional athletes. But like going through something with people, especially difficult suffering, like that forms bonds that are super powerful. You get to see people at their worst and at their best. And so a big part of this community is because it's something that I wanted and missed from the military. I think what a lot of dads struggle with is just being honest about the priority of health, right? It's too easy to be like, I've got all this other stuff going. I'm going to take care of my kids. We show up for other people and we're the last person that we show up for. And there's a part of that even comes from, you see that in the military. Like you'll show up for your battle before you show up for yourself. If there wasn't the whole team going to PT tomorrow, would you still get up at 4 a.m.? Like those things. And so I think recognizing the priority and understanding that like having a certain level of physical fitness affects everything else. Like I think that's a big, like when people realize that, when they step into discipline and they take control of themselves, that is a real like light bulb that goes on for them where they go like, holy shit, dude, I'm showing up different in all these other areas. It's so drilled into us in the military, the importance of being physically ready because it's for like the actual physical aspect. But I think they even underestimate, or we don't harp on it enough, how much it affects your mental performance, just having that discipline. I think another thing that people just struggle with, and it's not just dads, but it's just in general in culture, it's believing your feelings too much. And like so much of society tells you that your feelings matter so much. And feelings are important. You should be able to feel all the feelings. I've done a good amount of therapy and MDMA to get feelings back. But still having the ability to go like, oh, that is a feeling I don't have to listen to. This is just a signal from my body. It has nothing to do with what I'm actually capable of or when I actually have to stop. Like that part of it, that mindset is invaluable, I think. MDMA therapy for me has been incredible. It's been even more incredible for my wife and I. What MDMA does is it's like a psychedelic in some ways, but it won't give you the same visual hallucinations and you can get slight visual hallucinations, but it's nothing like doing a heavy dose of mushrooms or something. You're way more in control. It's way easier to talk and to stay present in the moment, but it takes away this layer of fear, and you don't even realize that you have the fear, but it's like, what stops you from saying that truth to your wife? What stops you from saying that truth to yourself? What stops you from remembering or thinking about this thing that you hate that sits in the back of your head? It takes away the pressure around that. So you have this little bit of space. I describe it like a warm hug where you're just like, oh. And then from there, you can bring up memories that you don't like. You can talk through aspects of yourself, your partner, your situation that you don't like, and the pressure of it being like the other person's responsibility or like some solve has to be there. That stuff goes away. And so you're able to just look at things more like reality instead of through this lens of anxiety, fear, pressure, trauma that sits over everything else. One of the first things I learned making television, so I made a show for Netflix called The Green Beret's Guide to Surviving the Apocalypse. And it was a shit show from the beginning. Basically, Matt Damon was my client. He walked us into WME, which is a huge talent agency. They packaged the show up and we sold it to Netflix. I pitched to Netflix. We sold it in the room, but we sold it as a reality television show because it's about the end of the world. I teach you how to survive a different natural disaster, but it's a totally scripted show at the same time. So typically that should go the scripted model, but if you go the scripted model, then you have to go through this development hell, which can take years. They could cancel your show at any time. It'd kind of like going to the Q-Course. And so they said, you could go the unscripted model. Everything else will be the same. I had no idea. They were lying to me. They just wanted to make the deal. It was not the same. We basically, because Matt was one of our producers, they gave us carte blanche and they let us run away with it. And we had no idea what we were doing. And it became a real shit show real quick. But in the process of making that show, like when I went into it, I was like, dude, I'm going to make everything so fucking perfectly military. Like it has to be right. Like you watch TV shows and movies and you're like, God, why is it wrong? Like how is that person in the wrong uniform? Well, they would never use that holster. And then I was making my own show and I'm working with my own prop guy and I give him the list of exactly what he should get. And then it's like day of shooting that scene, he walks over to you and he hands you a fucking, ankle holster and you were supposed to get a concealed holster and the barrel's wrong and the fucking, the uniform's wrong and the kit is wrong. And I'm like, no, this is all fucking wrong. We can't do that. And the executive producer is like, well, you can either shoot it with the wrong stuff or we'll take away $100,000 from your budget because we're going to have to lose today of filming and you'll do it tomorrow with the right stuff, but you'll have one less day of filming overall for your whole show. And like one less day is a tremendous amount of footage. You can't fucking sacrifice that. So all of these tiny decisions are made all of these tiny decisions are made out of like just essentially what has to happen. You're put between a rock and a hard place. And so I have way more, and I would encourage all vets to have way more empathy for people making TV shows. When something's fucked up, somebody told them what was right, but time, money, the calendar, everything dictates what you actually do. And at the end of the day, it's also art. And I realize that all the shit that we care about so much, nobody else gives a fuck about. So it's just a reality that I accepted from the entertainment industry. But this was great. Appreciate you letting me tell my story. I think there's probably a lot of us out there that feel similarly to me in terms of you go through the whole thing. You don't necessarily do the combat. You don't get the excitement that you think you wanted. It's interesting. Just the difference. It's interesting to me the way that so many people have such drastically different experiences from the military. One of the things that I take away and I try to remind everybody of that I meet is like, unless you're talking to somebody that was in the exact same place in the exact same year with the exact same command, then their stories could be very different and both be true. I think people will I see in comments all the time, people nitpicking somebody else's fucking combat story. And I'm like, how do you know? You know what I mean? I don't know why I was saying that, but I think there's just this idea in the civilian world, especially that like, if you meet one soldier, then every story should be the same. And as I've gone through my life, I've had to realize like, oh, everybody's stories are so wildly different. Each person's experience is so wildly different. You could be in the same area of operation, but with two different units, and your experience was hell and theirs was awesome. You'll talk to two Green Berets from two different teams that were operating at the same time, but because of their command structure or whatever was happening, one was eating like shit and the other one was having steak. It's just wild. If I was speaking to other vets that are in the same position as me, who felt like they missed out on getting to kill people, it sounds so fucked up to say, right? But that is the underlying thing is like, oh, would I have performed and showed up the way that I wanted to or believed that I could have? And I would say, like, at the end of the day, we're lucky. I used to feel so differently. I used to feel so upset about it. I didn't even want to talk about being in special forces because the second question is, well, have you ever killed anyone? And I'd have to be like, not today, or whatever, some dumb try to get out of, or whatever. But no, the answer is always no. And it's like, people are disappointed. We're not even one, which bummed me out for a long time. But now on the other side of it, I don't have nightmares. So that's huge.
Appreciate you taking the seat, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me talk.
Right on.